Alrighty, Aphrodite, we are back again with another beautiful lesson brought to you by Mr. Brown Productions. If any of you can come up with a really cool slogan, video slogan, I will say it at the start of each new video for our next topic. Okay? The winner will get a said prize. Okay, so make sure you get on it. Think of a absolute banger, bedazzling, beautiful saying that should introduce these videos. That'll get consumer interest in watching these. So that's your extra homework. Anyway, I digress. What we're going to look at today is social institutions, okay? This is lesson 9, and there's a lot to get through. This is a chunky boy, a big boy lesson, okay? So we're really going to be looking at all the different types of social institutions. I'm sure there's probably more, but again, the syllabus stipulates these are it, so we're going to go by that, okay? So we're going to be looking at how these institutions shape individuals, but also how those individuals therefore shape the social institution, right? So it's kind of goes both ways. So what is a social institution? A social institution are groups that exist for a common purpose or function. That's their definition, okay? They exist and they're groups, okay? It's not necessarily a building, like it doesn't have to be a school or government, like your family is a social institution, right? The concept of the media is a social institution, okay? It's a group that exists for a common purpose or function. So school, for example, exists for the common purpose function of educating our future generations. And by golly, the future is bright with you lot. I'm just so blessed. Government, again, exists for the common purpose or function in ensuring civil order occurs in society, etc. So they all have a purpose. So for example, oh God, I keep talking without reading the next line. Family exists to raise children, schools exist to educate children, media exists to communicate and inform people, yada yada. So there you go. You got some examples there. Social institutions, they exist on all levels, micro, meso and macro. That's very important to note. And that's one of the activities I think we do later on. Oh, it's not. Fun fact. Alright. This is what we're going to do, folks. You are going to highlight, I'm sorry if you've highlighted that already, you're going to highlight these 3 different colors. Okay? Boom, 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 boom. Okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to highlight these different colors. What level do they fall under? Is family micro, meso, and macro? Are peers micro, meso, macro? Work, government, media. I want you to classify each social institution according to the colour you've put here. Little fun side activity. The last point I've got here is that they have a significant impact on culture and that they differ between societies. That's a really important point. So we're very much going to be looking at these social institutions from a Western culture's perspective. Okay, I'm not going to be looking at how European culture or African culture, Asian culture, South American culture, whatever. I'm not looking at how they interact with social institutions, or as I'm sure there's probably some similarities, but we are going to be looking at this from a Western cultural perspective. Alright, so first activity, I want you to examine how each, and this is the activity throughout the whole thing, okay, so this is a big old explanation for a lot of what you're going to do. You're required to examine each of the following social institutions listed here. Right? And I want you to comment on how they are both shaped by individuals and how individuals are shaped by them. Okay, so it works in turn. So there's a step for each of them, but if you just kind of follow the prompts, you'll be right. But the first thing is I want you to read and highlight each social institution summary. So what I've done is I have created a bit of a summary on each one. I've actually done the whole of family for you. And I've done the government for you too, it looks like. But each summary I've got here, and what I would like you to do is similar to how we highlight key points throughout our word banks, and things like that, which I've de-highlighted because I do it at the end of the lesson. I want you to do that for each of the main summaries that I have here. Okay, that's step 1. Step 2 is I then want you to list the concepts that relate to each social institution, and that's in the gap here. So you can see for family, I've written persons, culture, environment, identity, power, authority. Now you might think of more. Okay, I'm sure you could put technology in there. If you got family overseas and you face chat them or time swap them, whatever it is, I'm sure you could put that in. But I'm just looking at, I guess, what are the most obvious sort of concepts that you can link in there. Okay, I'm sure you can put everything in, but don't put everything in. Put the main ones. Okay, that's step number 2. Step number 3 is explain how, I'm going to highlight these as we go so we don't get lost, is explain how the social institution shapes an individual. So how does the institution itself shape the individual? So how does it, from a mostly from a meso-macro perspective, although some social institutions are micro, like the family, and I've kind of tried to put this in AKA. So how is the individual shaped by family? So how does family influence you? And here I've written, family is the primary socialization agent and shapes the individual by raising them in an environment which infers the parents' values and beliefs onto the child. For example, individuals raised in a religious culture are likely to identify as religious. So what I want you to do is tell me, 1, how does family influence you? And then give me an example after it. Okay, and I want you to do that in each of these. This might be an activity which would be really good to work with a friend on. Okay, so you can swap and share ideas. I'm not going to give you any like textbook bits of information or anything, because you guys have all this knowledge up here. I would love you to collaborate together and really work this out. The second part of that then is explain how does an individual shape that social institution. So for example, how does an individual, or how do you influence your family? So the individual shapes the family through their own beliefs and values, which influences the dynamic of the group. So for example, an individual within the family may have a job in the army and bring a strong sense of responsibility and patriotism to the family dynamic. So that's an example, right? I've gone a bit OTT because I like to be an overachiever. I hope you do too. I've given another example. Alternatively, an individual within the family might also have been born with a certain health or mental condition, autism for example. This will therefore impact the perceptions that the family may have on the said illness, as they will interact with it frequently compared to most people. So again, that's just an example of how an individual may influence the social institution of a family. Okay, it may influence their beliefs and values, in other words. Okay, so that's the kind of thing I want you to do for each of them. I've done family and the government and legal system as examples for you. Now the reason I've grouped the government and legal system, they're separate up here, but for me as a social institution, I mean, we could get real technical and say that the separation of powers, the court system is different from the government, blah blah blah, but we don't need that extent of detail in society and culture. These, I guess, in this subject can be viewed as relatively one and the same. The only thing you'll have to add for the government one is the related concepts. I'll give you a hint. Authority is one of them. Okay, so the idea is that you'll tell me how they shape, and then you'll give me an example of how they shape that. Okay, plus the related concepts. I've given you a little introduction on what each social institution is, and I would like you to take the reins from there. I'm going to ease back a little bit from lecturing you to death. I want you guys to go through and highlight the appropriate key bits of information as you go. Alright, pause and do that. Come back to the video. I'll explain to the next bit once you've done that. Alright, now that you've done that beautiful activity, the second thing, or the sort of ending part of this lesson, is a case study experiment. Now this is a very famous experiment. It's called the Stanford Prison Experiment. It happened in 1971, so 52 years ago. So I want to stress that you know, we've previously just learnt about ethical research. I don't think this would be considered ethical research anymore, but it still serves as a very cool example, I guess, of how social constructs, social expectation, and social institutions can influence and shape someone's behaviour. So this kind of case study is really going to be tying in all the elements that we've just learnt about over the past 3 lessons. So that's really important to note. So a guy at Stanford University, what he did was he wanted to investigate psychological effects of perceived power and authority and the struggle between them. So he sort of created this experiment. They were all volunteers, they were university students, where he created a mini prison at his university, and he elected people to either be prison guards or he elected them to be prisoners. So by a flip of a coin they were assigned, and then the Professor Zimbardo, he was going to act as the superintendent. And what I'm going to get you guys to do is watch this video. I'll put the link in the Google Classroom post. This might be a fun one to watch with other people as well. But it just, I don't want to spoil it, but it was really cool sort of video that shows just how quickly people conform to social expectations and roles. In essence, a lot of people left midway through the experiment. These guys were like lifelong friends up until they did their experiment. They've never spoken to each other since. And the experiment itself was abandoned 6 days after it started. I think it was meant to go for 2 weeks. So it didn't even last half the time, because it started to get really dark. Like some guards, these people who were mates, were like doing psychological torture, physiological abuse. People were harassing everyone. Like, they really adopted those roles in a very socially constructed way. It's quite fascinating. So there's 3 things I want you to do. First is watch the clip. There it is. The second thing I want you to do, we're really proud if you get this one right, is I want you to identify which research methodology from our syllabus the Stanford Prison Experiment utilized. What research method did they use? I'll be so happy if you get it right. Question 3 is, I want you to then, after watching the video, write a summary outlining what this experiment discovered about social expectations related to 3 key concepts: social class, power, and authority. Okay, so power and authority we're familiar with. With social class, I want you to think about, there's probably a new concept, but you may be familiar with it. Social class is related to the perceived status of someone, depending on either their job occupation, their gender, their culture, whatever it is. So I guess, how did the social class and status of being a prisoner versus a prison guard, how did that change the dynamic of these guys' relationship in relation to social expectations, power and authority, and all that good stuff? Alright, I can't wait to read and see what you think. If you're up for it too, they made a movie out of it. You can watch the trailer on YouTube to see if you like it, or you can use the BWC ClickView login. I'm pretty sure it's on there. There's the link if you want to watch the movie. I haven't seen it, and check with your parents first if that's okay for you to watch that. But yeah, cool little extension activity if you're up for it. Alright, ciao.